No one spoke for the rest of the day. The crew tried to busy themselves with tasks around the ship. The Unremarkable was being held together with scrap metal and spot welds, and it frequently needed attention. Cassiwa and Rhea busied themselves in the engine room, helping speed along the cooling process for the reactor. Nuck continued to monitor Rod's condition, sitting in the sickbay with him while adjusting the fine lenses and wiring on the quality site they'd procured. Nuck hired nurses local to Outer Kalmu to tend to some of Rod's wounds, which would speed along his recovery. He responded well to the treatment, which was to say that he didn't respond at all. He continued to sleep, continued to recover. Obiedros dealt with the grief of Coralie's death a little more directly. He prepared a eulogy for her, asking the great Father Star to guide her to her own corner of the night sky. In their cold detachment from death, Nuck and Obiedros had something in common. For Nuck, the loss of life was as impossible to express as any other emotion. While he may have felt remorse or pain, his body simply wasn't able to convey those feelings. For Obiedros, death was a part of daily life, and that relationship to the afterlife was one of the few things that hadn't changed since joining the Unremarkable. He celebrated Coralie's passing, praising her soul and committing her to his memory, as all his people did. The crew came together late in the day to dig a grave for Coralie, and they shared quiet silence as they watched Obiedros slowly lower her down. The red sand and clay of Outer Kalmu wasn't Coralie's home, but they didn't know where she lived, where she came from. They knew so very little of her, given she'd only been with them a few short days. No one wept, but that wasn't to say no one was somber to bury a friend. Instead, this was life so many parsecs from the core. One way or another, each of them understood that they too would one day be lowered into an unmarked grave on a distant planet. Nuck left the service first, but everyone else followed closely. As they approached the landing doors of the Unremarkable, the group spotted a small furry creature, like a rat or a weevil, scamper innocently onto the loading ramp. Its nose twitched, eyes black and wide. It froze, and yet it trembled, as if breathing quickly, furiously. Suddenly, a figure leapt from behind one of them, soaring overhead. All four members of the Unremarkable were startled, pistols drawn quickly, weapons clenched, as the figure slammed into the loading ramp. He collided just beside the furry creature, who tried to scamper away. In an instant, the figure dropped a massive knife in the path of the critter as it tried to flee. The creature juked, but with its other hand, the figure clamped another knife down onto the ramp, boxing the little critter in. Just as fast as he'd pinned the small rodent, all four weapons of the Unremarkable crew were pointed at his head. He looked up, expression hidden behind dust goggles and a rebreather. His ears were massive, twitching in the slightest breeze as if hearing something ever so far away. His hair was more like wire, long cords of jagged blue that ended in crisp white points. While his face was hidden, it seemed he was smiling, to have caught this critter between his blades. "Would you say that I have captured this creature?" he asked. No one responded for a few moments, until Obiedros innocently offered a nod. With that, the figure stood, and the critter fled, gracious to be freed from between the knives and unwilling to test its luck any further. "Then you would say that the hunt has been a success. I will not kill this creature. I have no need to, for my belly is full." The figure slipped his knives, two of many on his body, back into their sheaths. He clomped down the ramp, oblivious or uncaring of all the weapons pointed at him. He stood before the crew and extended a furry blue hand. "I am Vukovok. I have hunted and I have been successful. Now I must seek larger prey." Cassiwa cocked her shotgun. "Maybe next time a little less hunting near our home," she said through gritted teeth. Vukovok looked over his shoulder at the Unremarkable and threw a thumb in its direction. This is your home?" You should have said so. I would have invited you to feast on the critter. It wasn't my catch, it seems. Would you like me to catch it again, and you can suck the marrow from its bones? Or would you rather hunt something larger?" Within the hour, and with a lot of time spent explaining, tempers settled, and the crew holstered their weapons, but not their attention. Vukovac was a local hunter, it seemed, recently granted his freedom. Work for him was light, so he was seeking opportunities. For him, hunts had to escalate, or they were a sign of failure. Catching the critter meant that he had to hunt something literally larger, and as it happened, the Unremarkable was about to go on a hunt of their own. The Fletcher's Guild had suffered a defeat when the Union was routed, but as was the nature of their conflict with the Liberatus Polyclub, this was just another turn in their game. The Guild wanted to retaliate, and this time they were swinging big. The Polyclub had taken to hiring Union busters who had recently arrived from off-world. One of them, a man named Dawkins, was meeting with 2 associates at a refinery site. Dawkins was well known for breaking up union lines at contract negotiations, but worse yet, Dawkins was a sign of more busters to come. The Guild wanted wet work done, eliminate Dawkins, and in doing so, send a message to other busters in the sector that there was no work to be found trying to intercept or interrupt the Fletcher's Guild. Vukovac was well suited to the task, given he'd spent more time on Outer Kalmu and knew the region well. Moreover, the job was a hunt, and from behind his rebreather, the crew could almost hear the feral salivating at the chance. One by one, Vukovac arranged his absurdly large collection of knives on the table. Some small, pointed affairs with blades shorter than their handles, others veritable short swords with long curved edges and brutal rusted sides. With each one, he spoke its purpose. Bleeding, cutting, flaying, deboning, chopping, breaking, parrying, throwing. It seemed the only thing that outweighed Vukovac's eagerness for the hunt was his admiration for his own collection of cutting tools. Vukovac activated his jump belt, soaring over a nearby building to land on the other side. Nuck dashed to keep the pace with the eager feral. The enemy took up cover behind a service shed. Another sprinted for cover behind some fuel barrels. Obiedros and Rhea cleared the makeshift barricade and took cover behind the catwalk risers. Kaziwa dashed across the opening, hoping to reinforce Nuck and Vukovac. Rhea took up an angle, leveled her shell gun, and launched a grenade at the enemy enforcer. The cover proved too much, and the explosion roared harmlessly beside her target. Obiedros scrambled for cover behind Dawkins' car. Again, Vukovac activated his jump belt, clearing the building instead of going around it. Dawkins stepped out and raised a massive hand cannon. He leveled a shot against Vukovac, but the feral was fortunate to have enough cover to avoid the shot. The second enforcer came around the barrels and fired his colony rifle at Rhea. The shot went wide. Nuck continued to try and catch up with Vukovac. Near Rhea, one of the gaskets on the fuel refinery started to hiss like a furious cobra. Suddenly, a bolt ruptured, and liquid-hot fuel erupted across the area. She was engulfed in the liquid-hot flames, and before she could even process the agonizing pain, she was administered a stim pack. Nuck rounded the stairs and raised his Klingfire pistol. There, in his sights, out in the open, was Dawkins. Nuck depressed the trigger, and a gout of flame washed out from the pistol. Dawkins was crafty and retreated just beyond the reach of the burning Iker. For a third time, Vukovac frog-leapt a building. He slammed into the ground in front of Dawkins, his knives already drawn. "Larger prey," he said before slashing at Dawkins. The Union Buster was no slouch, though, and he drew his own knife, knocking Vukovac off balance. Dawkins leveled his pistol at Vukovac's leg and fired. The bullet destroyed the feral's leg, dropping him to the ground. Rhea, still stunned from the fuel fire, crawls to cover behind a dumpster. Dawkins realized he was exposed and returned to cover. His enforcer bodyguard returned to his side. With Rhea falling back, the enforcer advanced and fired at Obiedros. The shot tore into the hood of Dawkins' car. Obiedros advanced and returned fire. He was more accurate, and the bullet tore into the enforcer, dropping him. Cassiwa advanced further, remaining in cover. Cassiwa took another dash, tucking into cover before the enemy could react. Nuck climbed the stairs, using the banister as cover. Dawkins saw Nuck's move and came out to fire his hand cannon. The gamble paid off for Nuck as the bullet tore into the handrail. The bodyguard scaled the building to join Dawkins, but the exhaust flume gave Nuck total cover. Rhea recovered from the shock of the fuel explosion. She sidled up with Obiedros and fired a grenade at the utility shed. Both the bodyguard and Dawkins were safe from the explosion. Obiedros aimed and fired at the bodyguard as well, but the utility shed bore the brunt of the impact. Cassiwa felt that between Vukovac's aggression, the fuel explosion, and the enemy's use of cover, the situation was not well in hand. She scrambled up the nearby dumpster and rolled into view on the rooftop. Dawkins turned to face her, just in time to hear her chamber around into her shotgun. She smiled and fired, and at this range, missing was impossible. Dawkins was shredded. The bodyguard, seeing his boss go down, had no interest in engaging with Cassiwa. He slipped off the side of the roof to take a safer shot against Obiedros, but missed. Nuck climbed the rest of the stairs. He unleashed gouts of flame from his pistol. Vukovac laid on the ground, writhing and rolling. His leg was destroyed by the shot from Dawkins, the kneecap decimated, exposed bone and flesh all that remained. He squirmed, clenching his hand over the wound to stem the bleeding. Yet he didn't make a sound, his breathing only slightly elevated. The crew collected him and cautiously brought him back to the Unremarkable. Each step was arduous and slow. Vukovac couldn't put any weight on that leg, but with Dawkins and the enforcers gone, there was no rush. The nurse responsible for treating Rod saw the crew approach and rushed out with her medkit to examine Vukovac's injury. Her diagnosis was swift and severe. At best, he'd require reconstructive surgery to rebuild his knee. At worst, he'd lose the leg. Either way, treatment wouldn't be cheap. She raised her comm unit to call to the city for a surgeon, but Rhea stayed her hand. The nurse and Rhea shared a long look before the nurse slowly lowered her comm and then escorted Vukovac carefully into the sickbay. No call was made. No doctor was coming. I am expressing the obvious. He is a mercenary, and he is wounded. Paying for his recovery is not our responsibility, Nuck offered. Yes, but it was only because he was working for us that he was injured. Shouldn't we help him? Obiedros countered. Cassiwa shook her head, as did Rhea. The women shared a look as if to quietly debate who should respond to Obiedros, and Cassiwa took the responsibility. We are helping him. He stays on the crew, he gets his share, like the rest of us. He gets food, he gets drink, he gets a bed. But we can't take financial responsibility for every bad decision that someone makes, Obi. Paying for his recovery would take all the credits we just earned from this job. These mercenaries, they're gonna come and go. Vukovac, he was reckless. He picked a fight, and he lost. That's on him. If he wants, he can save up and buy himself a new leg when we get closer to the core. He'll have a full belly and a roof over his head until he does. Obiedros looked up to the rust-orange sky overhead. He softly closed his eyes and issued a prayer to the Great Father Star. The rest of the crew watched Obiedros, not interrupting his reverie. Am I also just a mercenary? He asked. Cassiwa approached and put her hand on Obiedros' shoulder. She half smiled at him. Yes, but I trust you not to pick losing fights. Just in case, though, you should save your money. Cassiwa smiled at Obiedros. Hours later, a woman approached the Unreliable landing site. She was a traveling vendor from the nearby city, hauling behind her a maglev cart riddled with trinkets and goods, all draped under cloths and large sheets. She offered wares to the party in exchange for something else. Her intent wasn't to make money, it was to make deals. And for her, the act of trade satisfied that need. Cassiwa offered her a colony rifle that hadn't been used for some time, and the vendor offered a crate in exchange. As the vendor loped away, satisfied with the deal, Cassiwa opened the crate and smiled. Medical supplies. Lots and lots of medical supplies. We might make it through all this after all, she said to no one in particular. Rod turned over in his bed and saw Vukovac in a neighboring bed. Rod blinked twice, thrice, as if trying to clear his vision. Through dried lips and a hoarse throat, Rod spoke. Nuck, who the hell is that guy?